Dominus vobiscum, amigos, and welcome to this final Sunday in Ordinary Time. Today we're celebrating the feast of Christ, King of the Universe. And I'd like to reflect on these readings a little bit. There's a marketing guru named Seth Godin out there. And I was watching one of his TED Talks at one point, and he was in a school, and he said, all right, what I want everybody to do is raise their hand as high as they can raise it. Raise it up. And everybody in the crowd did it. And then he said, okay, now raise your hand a little bit higher. And then people proceeded to do it. And he said, aha, I got you. And everybody kind of looked around a little bit. But when we think about it, raise your hand as high as you possibly can. If somebody asks you to raise it a little bit higher, you should be unable to do it at that point if you've truly raised it as high as you possibly can. His point was this, that a lot of times in education, we do enough to get by. We read enough chapters so that we'll pass the test, or we'll study enough flashcards so that we can be fast enough. I think the same thing happens in our spiritual lives. We do enough so that we can slide into heaven, so to speak. We ask, what are the precepts of the church? What's the minimum that I can do? Do I have to go to church on this day? Is every single Sunday really, truly required? Do I have to do this when I go on vacation? And so on and so forth. It's a natural human thing to start asking, what's the minimum that I can do? What is the requirement? And I'll aim for that. As we come to the close of this liturgical year, though, we're given readings that really talk about Christ's kingship and the life that we're supposed to have in knowledge that Christ is the King of our lives. In the first reading, we have a reading from the book of the prophet Daniel, where we're introduced to this mysterious figure, the Son of Man, that he has in this vision, who rides upon the clouds of heaven. He appears like a son of man, but he rides on the clouds of heaven. First century Jews would have read this, and earlier at that point actually, would have read this as one appearing like a son of man, so one who has the appearance of a human being, but who rides upon the clouds of heaven. In the Old Testament, God rode on the clouds of heaven. So there's this divine figure, this divine character, if you will, who had the appearance of a son of man, of a human being. So immediately what we get is this foreshadowing of this great Messiah who's going to be a divine figure as a man. And as it goes through, it starts talking about his kingship, that he receives everlasting dominion. It will not be taken away, and the kingship shall not be destroyed. The kingship of this character is absolute. This Messiah comes in and has dominion over all. This is the Messiah that the Jews are awaiting. They're waiting for this Messiah to come and to gain dominion over the foes of the world. But the difficulty comes in that this kingship is viewed in a purely earthly sense, that the king has dominion over all the nations of the world, that he is a great ruler who rules with the sword and whose subjects are truly 100% beneath him, that he owns and has kingship and exerts authority over everything. Flash forward to the gospel reading, and we have the details of the account of Jesus before Pilate, who's saying, are you truly a king? Are you the king of the Jews? Where is your kingdom? And Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my disciples would be fighting to keep it. This is a different type of kingdom that Jesus is proposing, and it cuts through to the very nature of the human soul, that Jesus desires kingship in the hearts of his followers. This is why, part of the reason why, Jesus doesn't come out directly and say, I am God. He insinuates it in every facet of his being, in how he speaks, in how he talks to people, in how he heals them, in how he forgives their sins, in how he teaches. He insinuates his divinity, but he doesn't come out and say it. He invites us into this kingship so that we can invite him into our hearts and into our souls, that he might truly dwell there as king. This is a very different type of kingship than we've seen before. So we have to ask ourselves in the modern world, what does it mean to have Jesus be the king of our lives? Like, what does that actually mean? Do we give him everything in our business life? That we know that, hey, I'm involved in this thing, I'm overworked, I'm not spending enough time with my family, and therefore I need to quit this job and go find another, because this is what God's will is for me. Do we allow Jesus' kingship over our relationships, where we say, not my will, but yours be done. I want to do this, that, and the other thing, but I know that these things are wrong. I know that cohabitation before marriage is wrong, and therefore I'm going to either break off this relationship that's just toxic to me, or I'm going to have hard, honest conversations with this person whom I'm in relationship with, so that I can move forward and make Jesus the Lord of my relationships. Or maybe it's in our spiritual lives. I don't spend enough time with Jesus. A lot of times it's like, oh, well, of course, we're buddies. I go to church on Sundays. If we think about it in that way, lordship over our lives means that we are in more constant contact, because he is our Lord. He loves us. He cares for us, and we care for him. We'd like to be closer to him and closer communion with him. So maybe it means, I gotta find another daily mass that I can go to throughout the week. Or maybe it means something as simple as, look, I'm gonna pray for 5 minutes a day because I don't do that right now. So it's helpful, especially with Advent coming up, to reflect on this coming of the Messiah, who's going to be the king of everything, and reflect on, is he the king of my life? Are there spots in my life where I don't give him access? Are there spots in my life where something else is king? Are there spots in my life where, I really don't want there to be a God deep down? Because I think if we all look hard enough, there's something where we're like, I don't want to give up this. I want to be king here. I want to have dominion over this. It's helpful to do an examine of conscience, especially as we meditate on the coming of the Messiah, that he's expected, that he is going to be one who heals, one who frees from their sins, one who brings true freedom to Israel, the Israel back then and the Israel of God's chosen people, the church now. It's helpful to think about. In the next couple of weeks, as Advent goes on, I'd like to do a reflection with you guys on the verses of O Come, Emmanuel, that classic hymn that always gets played during Advent, sometimes to the point of overuse. But it's a very beautiful hymn, and I think that the lyrics often bring us great spiritual insights, especially in this time where we're getting ready for Christmas. It's not Christmas yet, but we're kind of in this in-between sort of a phase where we are expecting Jesus, but it's not truly Christmas yet. So I'd like to invite you over the next 4 weeks to join me in this series of meditations. I really hope that it'll be fruitful for you, and I really hope that this week before Advent can be a nice time of preparation to think about, where is it that I need to let God have more lordship in my life? And think about, where is it that I need to grow in my hopeful expectation of the Messiah? With that, stay in the state of grace, and God bless, friends.